welcome to another episode of the Petey Performance Podcast. Solo episode for you guys today. Coming on to talk about something that I have been speaking about of late on the Backdoor Cut podcast, as well as on the Petey Performance Podcast with some of the fantastic guests that we've had on. And it's something that is something that I've a little bit of insight into, and hopefully I'll be able to offer some insight into the topic of branding and personal branding for athletes. Now, obviously, I'm not branding myself as an athlete. I brand my own business and I have my own personal brand, I suppose, as a result of having the business Petey Performance and naming it Petey Performance. There are benefits to that. There are negatives to that. But I thought it appropriate to go into this type of chat because it's a conversation that I've been having with athletes as a result of presenting the Backdoor Cut podcast and what we're trying to achieve through the Backdoor Cut podcast and trying to be some sort of a vehicle to help athletes to develop their own personal brand, share a little bit more insight into the life of an inter-county athlete and what makes them tick and who they are as a person. And as a result of that, hopefully create leverage and create some opportunities for them, as well as furthering the game and generating more interest in the game for the benefit of everybody involved, really. Because I know we've spoken about it and we've touched on it in the last few weeks, especially on our episode with Kevin Feely, but the attendances at some of the games have been down and they haven't been too great for this stage of the season, given that we're going into the provincial championship, which is traditionally a huge time in the championship or the GAA calendar, and the interest level potentially hasn't been at the same level as it has been in the past. Now, there are multiple reasons for this, and I'm not going to say that personal branding is the one cure for any ailment here, and this is the thing that's going to solve it. But from my travels in Australia and from my experience in Australia, I have seen that they do really, really well in terms of creating personal branding for their athletes. Their athletes are more clued into the power of having a personal brand as well and the opportunities that that can generate and create for them. And they're probably better at being more open with their audience. And as a result of being a little bit more outspoken and being more open and candid around what goes on in their training process, what goes on in games, and being able to and confident enough to speak their minds, they then generate a little bit more interest in their given sport and in their given team and in their own personal journey, I guess. Now, there are benefits to that and there are drawbacks. You're always going to have haters. You're always going to have people that are going to say, well, you shouldn't be on social media or putting out anything on social media. You should be just focusing on your game. However, the game is quite finite in terms of your time as an athlete. And I know we're comparing professional to amateur athletes here. However, just because you're not paid for playing your sport doesn't mean you can't generate opportunities for yourself and for your own business and your own career through your other life of playing the sport and creating some sort of a personal brand and creating some sort of interest in what you do as an athlete and how you live your day to day, because it's a huge part of your life and it's probably a huge part of your personal identity. By giving a little bit more away in that regard, you're going to generate a lot of interest and you're going to get people interested in you as a person and you as an athlete. Hopefully then they'll care a little bit more about you and they will align themselves with your personal brand, potentially, if they see an alignment and a similarity in terms of their values and your values. And as a result of that, you may generate opportunities to work with various different revenue streams, we could say, if we were speaking business sense, but different organizations will like to align themselves with you because of what aligning themselves with you says about their brand. Say you are, for example, I'm going to use Darren McGurn and Owen McCabe as examples here because they're two good mates of mine. We're running the Backdoor Cut podcast together and I don't think they would mind. They are two athletes that are very clued into the power of creating a brand, and partially that's probably out of necessity because it is their livelihood. They're online coaches, so they have to generate interest in order to generate income. Now, if another athlete who's working in a vocation like teaching or nursing sees what they're doing, they might not see the value in doing that as an athlete to create revenue because they don't have a business. However, what you can do is you can generate more eyes on your sport, and then as a result of that, you'll have better attendances at the sport. Therefore, the sport will generate more revenue, and you're hoping that that will trickle down to your intercounty team, and then you will be given more resources as a result of that. So there is indirect opportunities to gain something out of getting more eyes on the sport. And I think it's what we need to do as a sport in terms of Gaelic games and hurling. I think we give absolutely nothing away at the moment. I think potentially back in the 70s and 80s, there was more of an effort made to make or to give fans insight into what happens in the sport. Now, that mightn't have been in regards to what was going on in training sessions. It mightn't have been in regards to video. But I was just reflecting today and thinking about Petey O'Shea's, the pub down in Kerry, and how the strength of that pub is not only because of how good a pub it is and the crack that they have and all the events that they throw, but it's also the brand of Petey O'Shea that is on the name up top. So if you are aligned and you enjoy Gaelic football and you're down that area of the country, you're probably going to go to that pub because it's a famous pub because of who it is associated with. And I think that a lot of athletes feel guilty if they're posting things on social media and feel guilty for giving anything away in interviews or giving anything away in a podcast, whereas realistically, they're having minimal impact on the results of the team or on what happens on game day by giving that away. Because if you've reflected and watched footage, which we all have the availability to do as say sports medicine or sports performance coaches or even just general skills coaches nowadays, you can watch every game that every team plays in. So you can pick up what their structures are, you can pick up what their tactics are, and as a result, you're not going to gain too much insight from what an athlete says in an interview during the week. Now, potentially you can gain something in terms of motivation from what somebody has said about you, but that will only be pulled upon on unique occasions. I don't think you can go to the well absolutely every week and be using extrinsic forms of motivation to motivate elite level athletes. And GAA players or Gaelic footballers and hurlers are elite level athletes and camogie players as well. So I don't think it's necessary to use that extrinsic motivation too often. I think a lot of the time they're intrinsically motivated. So I think there's not that much to be gained or not that much to be lost by going and speaking into existence or speaking out into the world what you want to achieve, what you do in your game and what you like to do to try to give insights into younger athletes or give insights to younger athletes around how they can develop and improve their own games, as well as then building some sort of a personal brand to give you leverage in any negotiations that you might have with any organizations or opportunities down the road. So obviously, you have your personal brand, which is you as a person and your personal identity and what people think about when they think about you. And I heard a good quote recently around networking is knowing many people, but branding is having people know you. And branding is far more valuable than networking in some instances, because it gives you leverage in the negotiation that you go into. So any interaction that you go into where both parties are looking for something out of the negotiation, they're looking for a mutually beneficial relationship to occur, you have to have some sort of leverage. And both parties in that negotiation will have leverage in different instances. So one might have revenue to invest, the other might have the personal profile and the brand, being the athlete. If you have a strong personal brand and many people know you, then you can leverage that in the negotiation with the organization that's trying to maybe become affiliated with your personal brand or do some sort of collaboration with you as a marketing strategy. And as a result of that, you can gain more from that negotiation. So if you have more followers or you have more status, then you will have more leverage as a personal brand going into that negotiation. If you have, say, 2,000 followers and not many people know of you, you might be a great player, as lots of people do, but you mightn't be as well known and as high profile an athlete as others. Then you're going to have less leverage going into that negotiation. As a result of that, less opportunities are going to come your way because you're not as widespread and you're not as well known in the marketplace. Now, this might all sound very businessy, and some athletes will say, look, I don't want to get into business. I just want to play football, or I want to play hurling or camogie or whatever. And that's perfectly fine. You can go and do that for sure. But I think you're missing a trick, because an intercounty career, what is it, 10 years, 15 years probably at most? And in that 10 or 15 years, you have the opportunity to generate additional income. Now, you don't need to generate additional income through the vehicle of the GAA because it's an amateur organization, but you can generate opportunities for yourself and for your own business if you are a business person. And I know that many GAA athletes operate and run their own businesses, be it coffee shops, be it their own fitness institutions like a gym or an online PT or a PT studio or an online personal training course or whatever they're doing. And you have the opportunity to create more revenue, and then in turn, you will have more income, which you'll be able to help your family with, and you'll be able to invest in different vehicles that can help your family to be self-sustainable, I guess, and be set for life. We all know that the cost of living is rising, and we all know that it's getting harder and harder to buy a house. It's getting harder and harder to put food on the table, and it's getting harder and harder to go to third level education and to afford even education at all. So I wouldn't ever demonize somebody trying to get more from the work that they do. If you're good enough at your job, then you're worthy of generating a little bit more income for what you do. Because if you think about value and offering value and the value exchange, if the person that wants to work with you is deeming what you're giving them of sufficient value, then they'll be willing to invest in it because it helps them in their life and it simplifies their life and it makes them happy, I guess. And then what you're doing is you are helping people through your own business, through your own whatever it is, entity that you've set up. And that's the reason that we get into the game. But there's nothing wrong with wanting a little bit more for what you do. It's the whole principle of work in the first place. Like, if you want to send up a company ladder, or you want to become a better lawyer or a better barrister, then you become compensated as a result of being better. So it's the same thing in business. It's the same thing in any profession. I believe if you are better at your job, then you're worthy of being compensated as a result of that. Very businessy talk so far. It won't be all business. But I think that a lot of athletes are worried about the perception of what is going to occur if they do speak their truth or speak honestly out into the media or even just on social media. And unless you're saying something completely outlandish or something that is maybe against opposition and a little bit vindictive or a little bit aggressive towards coaching staff, or something you shouldn't be really saying because it's not morally correct or morally right to do so, then I think there's no harm in putting things out there. Like, we see people put things up on social media all the time that are a bit of crack, that are informative, that are maybe just showing that they enjoy living their life and what they get up to and giving insights into their life. And I think that a lot more is to be gained by doing that than is to be lost by not doing it. You're missing a huge opportunity as an athlete if you're not doing it. And I even see it when we're reaching out to guests for the Backdoor Cut and for this podcast. Guests are reluctant to speak to us. And it's not like we ever pose really difficult questions to them. And the funny thing about podcasting is it can all be edited out in post anyway. So even if there is, if there is an instance where they put their foot in their mouth or they say something that they shouldn't have, we can always just take it out afterwards. It doesn't have to go live. And at the same time, we're just trying to sit down for a conversation with them, because it is mutually beneficial in that I develop my personal brand and I put my personal brand and my business in front of more people through the conversation, as well as putting forward information for those people that listen to it that is going to be high quality information and be useful for them. So it's putting elite level insights into elite level athleticism and sports psychology and rehab and return to play out there into the world for free, just for your time. That's all you have to do is listen to it. And then as a result of that exchange, people will associate my brand with value, and then they might be more likely to book on for a conversation or think of me, because I'll be front of mind if they do run into some rehab issues down the line and they need some help. And then I'll be able to help them in that regard. And then as a result of me being able to help them, there will be an exchange of value, and then they will, I as a result of that, will generate revenue for the business, which will help me in my life to generate higher level income, which will then help me to put food on the table, which will help me to hopefully buy a house one day and hopefully send my kids to higher education whenever they crop up down the line. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And like, I've gained a lot through personal branding, I suppose, and through having the podcast. And that is one of my methods for personal branding, as well as everything that I put up on social media. And the thing with social media as well is, and with podcasting and with any of this stuff, is you only have to share what you want to share. So if you don't want to share something, then you don't have to share it. But I don't think that putting up an image post a game, or even like an image after a hard training session, is going to detract too much from your performance at all. People that are going to talk shit to you on the field are going to talk shit to you anyway, either way. Whether you've put up a few videos on TikTok or on Instagram, it doesn't really matter, because they're still going to talk shit. Like, I'm just thinking of Owen here now, because a few things have cropped to mind, like he was getting mouted at recently in a game, somebody saying, "Oh, you're going to make a few TikToks today." But like, Owen's a strong character and he's very mentally strong, and he's not going to let any of that stuff get under his skin at all. And if that did get under your skin, I think like then potentially you're worrying a little bit too much about what other people think of you. And then I think whether they said that or they said something else, it probably would get under your skin regardless. So you're not losing anything at all by putting it out into the world. You're actually probably gaining a lot more from doing so. And as a result of putting it out more, you probably will start to care a little bit less about what other people will think of you. And I think that's missed a lot by a lot of athletes. And maybe it's not actually just GAA, even though that's just the niche that I'm in. Actually, I would see it a lot in rugby as well. I think there are certain people and certain individuals in rugby that aren't afraid to share insights into their lives, or even just put up a post after a game, and they realize that they can gain a lot out of generating a good following, and they can have more opportunities then post rugby to go into maybe analysis or go into even business, because more people will be aware of them and they'll be front of mind for more people, and people will be maybe more kind when they think of them in their head, because they'll think that they're a good person because of what they've put out. They'll think whatever the person wants them to think of them, because they put out whatever they want to put out. So if you're putting out more funny content, like for example, like Simon Zebo, then people are going to think you're a bit of a joker, and he is a bit of a joker, I guess. And as a result of that, he's been on multiple podcasts. He's also been on RTE doing analysis, and people, when they think of Simon Zebo, they think like, that guy is good crack, but also he's a good analyst, because he's been given those opportunities as a result of being the player that he is on one hand, as well as creating that personal brand. And look, I'm not saying that it would work if you weren't playing good football or playing good rugby or playing good hurling. I think number one is always going to be playing your sport to the highest level, but there's only 24 hours in the day, and there's only 1 to 2 hours that you're going to dedicate to actual training. So it takes about what, 5 to 10 minutes to put up a good post on social media, be it like a photo post or just an image. If you want to create a video or any sort of short form content, like you can outsource to that or outsource for that. And generally, like to record any of those is probably going to take about 2 to 5 minutes, maybe less if you get it in one take, if you're an absolute pro. And then to put it out then thereafter and edit it in post, it's probably going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to edit and put together. Like, that's not really that much. And as well as that, as I said, all you need to do is show up because you are the star. You're the person that people want to hear from. You can outsource to other people to make your content for you. And I think there is a market definitely there for a high caliber GAA athlete that is going to put out insights into their life as an intercounty athlete. I know Owen has put out, this is what it looks like, and a video of like a championship day and his championship prep. I think a lot of Australian athletes and American athletes are now vlogging, and I think it's a really interesting thing to do and a really valuable thing to do because it gives insight into their lives for the fans, and they see how hard they work. They also see what resources that the athletes have, and younger athletes and younger people get to see what a life like that is like. So then as a result of that, they can choose that, look, I want to have that life. So then as a result of that, they can go after it and work hard and try and achieve it. Or they could say, look, that actually doesn't look like it's for me. So they can go into any other field that they like. So I think it benefits the world to put it out there, to be honest. I don't know why you wouldn't put it out there. But I think, as well as that, we complain about attendances being down all the time, and we complain about the interest level not being there, and we complain about the sport not being good enough or entertaining enough. And I don't think like changing the logistics of how you run the championship and changing the championship structure and the dates that we're going to run different games or have different stages of the championship is really the issue, as well as all these rule changes. I think that the game is a good product. Like if you watch the games at the weekend last, which on the point of recording this were the Donegal game and the Tyrone game and Cavan, and like the quality of those games was outrageous. I know Roscommon and Mayo maybe didn't live up to the hype that the other games did, and the other games were just so good. Like, why would you not want to be there? And even if you look at the hurling, then you look at Clare and Limerick, class game as well. Like, and I think the majority of the games are that high level because the athletes are just that good. So the issue isn't that the product isn't good, because the product is clearly top level. Like the standard of hurling and football is higher than it has ever been before. So I think the issue then is potentially either a value issue, in that I know I've talked previously about the price of tickets being maybe not deemed of value to go to the games, and it is harder for families to get to the game. So maybe they do need to drop the price of those tickets, or they need to generate more interest through other means. And I think like just having RTE, GAA Go, and then BBC doing great coverage, but it's minimal, I think it may not be enough to generate the interest to get absolutely everybody to go to the games. And especially at this time of the year when this is anecdotal, of course, but the Premier League is still going on. All of the soccer leagues are still going on. The rugby is still going on. It's coming into the end of the season as well. And you are competing for people's eyes, I suppose. There may have been few people that didn't go to games last weekend because other fixtures were on in other sports that they wanted to watch, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they deemed that staying at home and watching the football or watching the hurling was going to be of higher value to their day than it would have to spend on the ticket and drive down to the game and go with their friends to the game or go with their family to the game and watch it there. So they said, we just watch it on telly. But then you have the other side of it where not all of the games were even on telly. And I know some people have said about the coverage not being up to standard. And I know I've said it myself in regards to the quality of some of the coverage that you'd see on the Sunday game or that you'd see on GAA Go. I think, like, given that the GAA generates so much revenue, I think they could invest in delivering a better product on screen, which would then potentially not lead to people sitting at home to watch it, but lead to them wanting to go to it because they're seeing that the game is just absolutely outrageous. Like when RTE actually show the games on TV and they do their slow-mos and they do their insights, and BBC now as well with that behind the goal camera where they watch the ball be kicked out. TG Cahir do it as well. They do it really, really well. You can see what you're missing, I suppose, by not being there. And as a result of that, you're going to be more likely to, well, I'm more likely to go and watch the games. And if I wasn't driving around the country for podcasts all the time, I would probably have been at more of the games already, but I've definitely penciled in to go to more of them over the coming weeks. But I think people buy into what you do because of storytelling. Now, I know this might be kind of marketing speak, but you're telling your story as an athlete online of who you are, what you like, what you don't like. If you watch any of, say, the sporting influencers, if you can even call them that, they'll take pictures of coffee shops. They'll take pictures of them watching Premier League, maybe. They'll take pictures of them going to the gym. They'll take pictures of them kicking balls down the pitch, or videos even. They'll take pictures and videos of them doing their recovery. And that gives some insight into what they, and as well as that, they might play golf as well and take videos of that. But that gives some insight into what they like to do as a person. And as a result of that, you can either align with that and you'll see some of what you like to do in your life, in their life. And then as a result of that, maybe you'll support them more as a result of their story as a person. And I think that that's missed an awful lot of the time. But if you look at all of the sporting organizations in Australia and much of them in the US as well, they're now doing their own personal podcasts as an organization. So like GWS have their own podcast. They have their own media guy and he sits down with members of the playing staff, members of the coaching team. Then you have the West Tigers where I went as well. They have their own one too. I'm pretty sure that the New Zealand Warriors have one too. They do really, really good job with their content and they have exclusive access to the players. And I think that would be class if a county team decided to do that. And like, you don't need to sit down for an hour as well. You could grab them for 20 minutes after training for just a bit of a chinwag and a bit of a chat, and people would get to know them a little bit more. And as a result of that, they would see them as a person a little bit more. And as a result of that, they might support the team even harder because they care about that person. As well as that, when these people don't put that out into the world and they don't show the personal side of themselves, potentially it makes it easier for people to attack them rather than harder, because they see them as like this staunch individual that doesn't give anything away and has no other life. They're just an athlete, so I can say whatever I want on social media about them. Whereas if they gave insight into that person, into themselves as a person, and you saw that, look, they have things that they struggle with themselves, then potentially those same fans mightn't be as likely to bite at them. Like, sorry to say this, but even to use Dele Alli as an example, like recently, obviously he had that harrowing interview with Gary Neville where he gave insight into how difficult his life was. And then all of a sudden, everybody that had been talking shit about him essentially and spitting vitriol, is that the way of putting it? Like, they all retracted what they had said and they said, oh, sorry, I was just treating him as a footballer and saying, oh, look, he's not living up to his potential and he's obviously not bought in. But they didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. And not that you're going to give insight into that, but as a result of him being a little bit more vulnerable, being more open, then those people retracted what they said, and now people are so supportive of him. And it is hard to be vulnerable. I've struggled myself at times, especially on this podcast, in being vulnerable. But you realise that when you are vulnerable and you put it out into the world, more people have felt the same way that you have than you thought. As well as that, more people can empathise with the way what you're going through because they've gone through the exact same thing. And as a result of that, you'll probably generate more support because people will see you as a person, an authentic person. And you may even help people as a result of putting that out, because there are some people like you out there that don't realize there are so many other people going through the exact same stuff that they're going through. And potentially they'll reach out to you and potentially you could offer some advice or even just lend an ear and be a sounding board for them, or maybe just let them know that they're not alone. And that's a positive in itself as well. But I think if you bottle it up and you don't put it out, then maybe you're doing a disservice to society a little bit as well. And you're probably contributing to the stigma rather than helping to break the stigma. But that's a whole other side of it. That's giving insight into yourself that is very, very difficult to do. And I'm not saying that absolutely everybody should be doing that, but I think there is a benefit to some people doing that. In regards to how I find reaching out to guests and recording the podcast, I've had these conversations with a number of athletes over the last 6 months probably, as well as coaches too. And I find it's a lot easier to sit down with female athletes than it is to sit down with male athletes. I find that female athletes understand personal branding a little bit more. And as a result, they're more willing to sit down with you and have the conversation because they know what they gain from putting stuff out into the world, what other people gain, as well as what their sport gains. And from these conversations, I think potentially it is because they actually need to do that because they've been pushed to the side for so long. They need to put themselves front and center, put their sport front and center, and get more eyes on their sport in order to grow their game and get more resources for both themselves and for their teammates and for their sport. And I think that's something that's missed, as it's often missed in male sport because you just get given things at elite level and you don't even have to think about it. But that might not necessarily be the way forever, and it won't be. When you're finished your intercounty career, you're a former intercounty athlete now. You're not a current one. As a result, you probably lose significant amount of your leverage that you would have for those negotiations. You potentially even will lose a lot of your following and the interest that people will have in you, because the aspect of you that they're most interested in at that stage is now gone. Your sport. They want to see what leads to you being the elite level athlete that you are. And the second that is finished, then they're going to care probably a little bit less. Now, some athletes do a really good job of continuing that on into their retirement, and generally they're the ones that become the analysts, they become podcasters, but they've already generated a lot of interest around themselves throughout their career to make it easier to transition into that. So I think athletes should be thinking about that, especially as they near the end of their career. But even at the start, because imagine if you start earlier than the rest, you could build such a profile, such a presence online that you'll have so many opportunities when you're finished to further yourself in terms of career, in terms of business, in terms of putting your family's best foot forward and giving them more opportunities. And that will be because more people know you and know who you are. You'll be front of mind for so many people. So I think from my conversations, I know a couple of athletes that have really, really strong personal brands and really, really strong brands and presences online. And I know I've spoken in the past with Sarah Rowe. I admire what she has done so much, because she's built such a profile online and she has built such a following online, and everybody knows who she is. And as a result of that, people might be more likely to watch the games that she's playing in, and the games and the teams that she's playing with probably generate a little bit more eyes and more interest as a result of that. And that is benefiting her in her negotiation with the team, as well as benefiting the team in that they're getting more support, they're getting potentially more interest from potential sponsors, and as a result of that, they're generating more revenue and they can invest that back into the team. And then as a result of that, they may in fact have better resources and better players, and as a result of that, a better chance of winning and putting their name into the hat for winning that premiership, I guess. And another Irish athlete that does a really good job of that is Orla Dwyer, who we mentioned recently. Jennifer Dunn was talking about how well she's done in developing her own personal brand. And Orla doesn't share that much into like her lifestyle. She just puts up what she's doing in training. She puts up her Pilates. She puts up her enjoying the sun down in Australia and the Australian lifestyle. She plays a bit of golf now as well, by the looks of things. And as a result of that, she gets more opportunities. And a result of that, she has a top level contract. She's a pretty good player as well, let's say, as is Sarah. But at the same time, loads of brands want to align themselves and collaborate with her. And she's probably saying no to them, as is Sarah. Like from my conversations with Sarah, she has to say no to podcast appearances, to guest appearances at times, because she does at times just need to focus on her footy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at certain time points or certain times in the calendar, you're going to have more time than you would at others. And I think it's important at that stage to go and further your own personal brand and professional status, I suppose, because you're only going to be an athlete for so long. You don't know what you're going to do after you're finished being an athlete, but you might as well be prepared for it. And I don't think you lose anything or the sport loses anything from you doing that. And I know like many ladies footballers might and camogie players might not feel comfortable doing so, as do the men. Like I talked with Kevin last week, and Kevin's not really comfortable doing it either, and speaking out into the world. But Jesus, if you think this is easy for me or was easy for me, then you got another thing coming. Like this was so difficult to put together. Like I remember my first podcast I did was just talking to myself, and it was during COVID, so I had nothing else to do. But I was absolutely shitting myself. And now I put out a podcast a week. It's absolutely nothing to me. And I've no problem talking about what's going on in my life or talking about my own mental health on the podcast, but as well as that, I will also say I wasn't comfortable talking about my mental health at all with anybody before I even talked about it on the podcast. I almost saw it as a challenge for myself that, look, if I'll be able to talk about it on here, I'll be able to talk about it with anyone because it'll be out in the open and I won't be able to hide anymore. And I think like there's real power in doing that. And I think that people are often worried about how they will be perceived. But sorry to tell you, the people that think you're a dick are still going to think you're a dick after you put anything on social media. It doesn't really matter. And why would you worry about those people anyway? If it creates more opportunities for you, for your family, for your friends, then I'd be gung-ho, go and do it. Put it out into the world and see what happens. And the good thing about social media and the good thing about the internet is if no one sees it, and it's bad, no one sees it. Like, it's not going to get pushed to anyone. So I think if you're struggling like in that regard and you want to put things out, but you're kind of unsure as to what to put out or you're worried about what other people will think, I'd just start posting. And the more you post, the easier it'll get. And it doesn't have to be huge things. Like, to be honest, sometimes I struggle as a coach. Like I think, okay, everything I put out has got to be insightful. It's got to be insights into the game. It's got to be insights into rehab, return to play, performance, nutrition, whatever. However, the things that get the most interest for me online now are typically me doing my training, which is individual to me. It's not really going to push the boat out or further anybody. Maybe it'll give them some added motivation in that they'll think, look, I'm skinny as well and I can go train. Me playing golf, equally, I'm not great at golf, but like maybe it gives people motivation to say, look, if he can play golf, then I might as well get out and practice too. Or me enjoying life, I suppose, outside my work life. And I think it gives insight into who I am as a person. And as a result of that, people can maybe say, Pete doesn't seem like such a bad guy. Maybe he would be good to work with because he offers all of these insights into performance and he offers all these insights into how he can help in terms of rehab, return to play and what I should be doing. But also, I like golf. He likes golf. Maybe we could chat about that as well. He likes going to matches. I like going to matches. He likes hurling. He likes football. He likes rugby. We can chat about that stuff. I can connect with him on that level. So I'm going to make an effort to put out more of that stuff. More pictures of me walking the dogs, more pictures and videos of me on my longer runs, more videos of me playing golf, as I said, a little bit of golf content, and more videos and insights into what I get up to into gym, because those four things are the things that I enjoy doing the most probably. So therefore, if I put that out, then more people are going to follow me that are interested in that stuff. And then they're going to be more closely aligned with me, and I'll develop a following that deem what I'm putting out worthwhile, and then there's an exchange of value there, in that like they're either going to enjoy the content, or even if they don't enjoy the content, then they'll hit unfollow and then you just lost a follower that wasn't really of any value to you anyway. So I'm making an effort to do that. I think as an athlete, just putting out small pieces isn't too hard, and if you're worried, just start. Put out one a week, for a few weeks. Nothing's going to occur negative, I would say. And anything negative that is said on it, like just block that person or just ignore them, because they were just going to be negative for the sake of being negative. And they're probably being negative towards you because something that's going on with them rather than something that's going on with you. So they need to address that themselves. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be gained from generating some sort of a brand. I certainly wouldn't be where I am now without my own personal brand and the strength of my brand. And I'm not saying that it's a really strong brand, like just over 5,000 followers, like, but then they do say comparison is the thief of joy. It's stronger than maybe brands that don't have that level of following, or that haven't worked with as many athletes as me, or haven't sat down for as many podcasts as I have with elite level athletes as well. So I haven't really lost anything from doing it. It's been an opportunity for personal growth. It's been an opportunity for career growth and professional development as well. And as a result of putting all this stuff out there, I've probably felt a little bit of pressure myself to continue learning and continue doing courses and continue being able to articulate myself a little bit better. And as a result of that, I would say I've just become a better coach, a better content creator, a better businessman, and definitely over the last few years, a better person as well. Like, I feel like I am living by my values a lot more than I was previously. So I think the whole operation, or the whole project of putting out more things, has been inherently valuable to me. And I think that other people are missing out on this. Now, it's not for everyone, as I said, but I think it should be for more athletes than it is not. And I do disagree with the conversation that's had from management and from selectors saying nobody put anything on social media, nobody speak to any media whatsoever. Like, as a pretty good athlete has said to me in the past, like very recent past, it is an amateur sport. So therefore, why do the managers and selectors have the right to tell you what you can and can't do in your outside life? It's the same thing as the idea of drinking bans a few years ago, and people gradually came around to the idea of, we're adults, like, we can have a drink in moderation when we want. Like, if I have too much to drink and I'm drinking too frequently, it's on me, like, and I'm impacting the team negatively. Then that needs to be addressed by the team, and myself, obviously, as well. However, an adult can't tell another adult what they can and can't do. You can suggest it, and you can place it and you can agree it as a group and say, look, we're going to enjoy ourselves on this night together as a group. And then after that, we'd prefer if lads just had a drink in moderation. And I know I've spoken about it in the past as well, in regards to the Irish rugby team and them going out, having a few glasses of wine when they were away at the World Cup midweek, and people being like, oh my God, that would never fly in a GAA dressing room. It's not going to impact you that negatively. In fact, you'll probably gain more from the event of sitting down and connecting with your friends in terms of your recovery than the 2 glasses of wine will detract from your recovery overall. And I think the problem is probably an Irish cultural problem as well, in that a lot of us don't know when to say, no, I've had enough, or to stop. It becomes a binge drinking culture, and that's probably going to impact pretty negatively on your performance. But there are instances in the season, as we've spoken about in the podcast before, where going out for a good few drinks after a game can be good for a team to connect together and can grow them closer together and push them closer together. So there's a place of value for that as well. But I think putting that on social media and videos up of that is one thing, and it seems a lot of athletes are more than happy to put that up after a game if they've won. Videos of them going drinking with the lads or going drinking with the ladies and doing some things that potentially they shouldn't. But maybe then you should be thinking, well, if I put that up willy-nilly, no problem at all, a load of videos of us singing in a pub, then potentially it's not that much of a push to put it up. Oh, here's my recovery protocol. Oh, here's my prep for the game today. Here's what I did in my mobility routine. Here's how I fueled up for this game. Here's how I recovered from this game in terms of nutrition. This is how I set up my sleep environment. Here's just a day in the life of what we do on a match day. Go for a coffee. I do a little bit of prep. We arrive at the ground. Small, little short form content even. Or you can make it longer and do a vlog like they're doing in Oz. I think it would generate great interest. I think it would generate opportunities for sponsorship, for collaboration, to create like affiliations with other athletes and other businesses for your own business. I think you gain way more than you lose. And sure, if you're putting that up after the game anyway, then there's nothing to be lost, because they're not going to have the ammunition to use against you on the field for that given game anyway, because it won't be ate up. And even if you record it all and then you lose the game and you feel like, okay, I don't want to put it up because we lost, you don't have to. You just have it there. And you can probably fall back in it if you're missing content for future instances and you want to just put up stories or short form content to generate a little bit of insight or interest into what you're doing as an athlete. But that's pretty much it for today. I just wanted to come on, and I've probably rambled a lot and I've probably been all over the place in terms of my understanding of business, but that's generally how my mind works in regards to all of this stuff. But hopefully I'll be able to help more athletes to do so. And if you're listening to this and you're an athlete that's struggling or worried about what they're going to put up, or for a matter of fact, as I said earlier, if you're somebody that's struggling with your mental health, like I have in the past, then I would recommend listening to my episode around my mental health journey, as well as reaching out. Like I'd be happy to have any conversations with anybody in regards to that, as well as if you're thinking about putting out more content on social media as an athlete, as a coach, even an S&C coach, but you don't know where to start, then reach out and I'd be happy to offer some advice. I know it's been a great journey for me, and I hope a lot more people can go through their own personal journey in that regard too. But that's pretty much it for today. It's an absolute wonder day here in Roscrea, which doesn't happen too often. So I am going to go out and enjoy the sunshine before a few client calls this evening, and then off to the gym, and maybe I'll get out to the putting green for a few chips and a putt to have a bit of practice. But that's my plan for today. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and if you did enjoy it, please remember to like it, share it, and send it.